The education of a country is so critically important because it shapes what the nation will become. What made the United States of America a leader among nations in a relatively short time? Part of it was widespread literacy. But what motivated that literacy in the first place? The desire to get people to be able to read the Bible for themselves.
The importance of education in America was not lost on a prominent visiting Frenchman in the 1830s.
When Tocqueville came to the United States about 50 years after our revolution, of course, it's also some decades after the French Revolution. And he sort of wants to investigate. He's, hired by the French government to look into what's going on in America and what they're getting right.
Alexis de Tocqueville wrote a book about his visit to America entitled Democracy in America. That book, published in the 1830s, is still in print today.
He said, Americans are infinitely more religious than the French, and yet they seem to have more liberty. He wrote in his famous book that not only are faith and liberty not at odds in America, but they actually bolster each other. Liberty leads to greater faith, and faith leads to greater liberty.
He said, you know what, there's a fourth branch of government in America. It's called the church or religion. While there's all this diversity of religious opinion, instead of it tearing apart American unity, it supports it because it's constantly supporting the principles of liberty and freedom and self-government. It was religion that he saw that was the secret of this new form of government that made it work so well. He's an outsider who was not a Protestant, watching America, trying to figure what was making it work. Basically, it was the education and Christian things that he saw that made America work.
Promotion of biblical knowledge continued well into the 18th and 19th centuries. The first Congress under the Constitution gave us the First Amendment and also passed a law that ensured that each state and territory to be added to the new nation would also be committed to building schools. If the American experiment were to work, it could only do so if the people could read and write for themselves. So on August 4th, 1789, Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance.
Then the Northwest Ordinance had provided for statehood and made clear that religion, morality, and education being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged.
The founders believed that religion and morality went hand in hand, and education was the key to that.
Every single one of the founders, we're not talking about a handful of Christian founders, every single one of the founders, including Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, knew that there was no way, genuinely no way, to have self-government and genuine liberty along the lines that they were proposing without a virtuous populace. And they understood that you can neither have virtue without faith. So the very concept of a secular culture was not only foreign to them, it was anathema to them. They knew that without faith, there was no way to have the kind of liberty that they were hoping to have and to keep for as long as possible.
Although the Northwest Ordinance encouraged schools, these were voluntary. If they were under any particular government, that would be local and state government at most, not under the federal government.
The founders thought that education was very, very important, but they gave the federal government no authority to deal with education. That is, education was mostly a state function. And if you look at James Madison and others who wrote in the Federalist Papers trying to get the colonies to ratify the United States Constitution, James Madison and other founders had a very limited view of the federal government. In fact, in Federalist Paper 45, James Madison was trying to explain what's in the Constitution, and he was saying that the powers that we left to the federal government are few and defined, and mostly restricted to external affairs.
It's amazing to think that the same founding fathers who gave us the First Amendment, which today is often used to keep religious influence out of the schools, also wrote up the Northwest Ordinance, which included the principle that religion and morality were paramount for a well-educated society. Back then, as the Bible was the chief textbook in one way or another, the literacy rates were much higher than they are today, despite all of our modern technological advances. Revive the works of thy hands, O Lord, is our prayer for American education. For Providence Forum, I'm Jerry Newcombe.